Okay, welcome to our 8th Mussar webinar for this year. The topic is gratitude, Hakarat. I'm going to start out the way I start every webinar, reminding you to share interesting things you're doing in our Chai Mitzvah Inspirational Facebook group. And I'll include a link in our follow-up email. If you're on Instagram, you might also want to follow us on Chai Mitzvah. We have some interesting things posted, especially by our teams. I'm going to start with the themes. One of the Mussar terms for gratitude is Hakarat. Oops, I'm sorry. It's Hakarat. There. My computer's not cooperating. I'll start again. So one of the Mussar terms for gratitude is Hakarat, which literally means noticing or recognizing the good. When you're sensitive enough to notice that a good deed has been done on our behalf, ideally we're going to store that memory, come to understand that we're part of a greater web of care and concern, and in response, pay the favor forward, either directly to the bestower of the kindness or to others in their honor. And that way, memory, a sense of gratitude, and loving kindness are interconnected midot. While there are other aspects of gratitude, this greater web of care and concern is a focus of this session. The Chai Mitzvah standard curriculum also has a gratitude topic this month, which is slightly different, has a personal focus, but the focus of this lesson is more about connecting to others. Let's begin with 2 biblical passages about Joseph in Egypt, well-known biblical passages that will lead us to a larger conversation about Hakarat Hatov. The first text is from Genesis. Here's a little background. Joseph is in Egypt. He's falsely imprisoned, and he offers his skill in dream interpretation to 2 fellow prisoners, Pharaoh's former cupbearer and Pharaoh's chief baker. So, Kristen, if you don't mind reading this, I'd be so grateful.
Sure.
Thanks.
Then the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph. Joseph said to him, "In 3 days, Pharaoh will pardon you and restore you to your post. But think of me when all is well with you again, and do me the kindness of mentioning me to Pharaoh, so as to free me from this place." On the 3rd day, his birthday, Pharaoh made a banquet for all his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his cupbearing, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But the chief baker he impaled, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not think of Joseph. He forgot him.
So this story is a timeless theme. Think about times that you or participants in your group have been asked to do a good deed for someone, or they've asked someone to help them out. Have you ever been in that situation? You do a good deed for someone and they just forget, and it's as if you never did it? So what can we learn from Joseph and the cupbearer? I'm thinking just last week, we helped some friends of ours. They have a new boat, and they came to our marina, and we ran down the dock. We were there for them to throw us a line, make sure that they were able to pull their boat into the dock, which is a very hard thing to do, especially with a new boat. And the next thing we hear them saying, "Oh yeah, we arrived, no problem. We just went right into the slip." Never did anyone acknowledge the fact that we had helped them in. It's not a huge deal, but it's an interesting thing when you're thinking about gratitude, even a small thing like this. Have you ever had a situation like that where you did something for someone and they just ignored it?
I'm sure I probably have. I can't think of anyone right now. But while it's kind of a little hurtful to do that, the thing that strikes me, though, is that when I do something for somebody else, I try to do it without looking for any reward myself, or without looking for them to repay the gratitude. I try to do it, yeah, here's what I've done for you, and that's it, and then I forget it.
Right. I think the joy of helping someone, that joy is enough. I don't really wait for them to say thank you. However, sometimes it's really nice to hear that thank you, or for us to develop the midah of gratitude in our own lives. We want to be those people who do remember to say thank you. And So, for example, think of someone who's done something nice. If you just wrote them an email or just said a little word to them, it's a very nice. It's a very nice thing. Or if your group is doing any kind of social action, this is a nice time to think of a social action project that might also go with this. But you're right. I think the point of doing something is not for the gratitude, but yet it's so nice to express gratitude to someone, either in deeds or just in words. And that kind of brings us to our next text, which is from Exodus. And it's about the first two of the plagues. This is very interesting. If you could read this one, it would be great. And then
Sure.
there we go.
And the Eternal said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your rod and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the rivers, over their streams, over their pools, and over their ponds of water, that they may become blood. And the Eternal said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch forth your hand with your rod over the rivers, over the canals, over the pools, and cause the frogs to come up upon the land of Egypt. And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt.
So this is not actually Moses stretching out his hand, it's Aaron. And that's very significant. There are only 2 plagues brought upon the Egyptians by Aaron instead of Moses. And there's a reason for this, which you may or may not already know. But one way we can think about it is, look back to the themes of this lesson. When we're sensitive enough to notice that a good deed has been done on our behalf, we'll store the memory, we'll come to understand that we are part of a greater web of care and concern, and in response, pay the favor forward, either directly to the bestower of the kindness or to another in their honor. So if you think about that, Hakarat HaTov can extend even to inanimate objects, not just people. It's easy to figure out why Aaron had to do this instead of Moses. Any guesses? I will tell you.
None.
Not only that, I'll tell you how Rashi explained it. According to Rashi, in Midrash Exodus Rabbah 9:10, the plagues of the blood and the frogs were brought through Aaron because Moses owed his life when he was a baby in a basket to the river. He owed a debt of gratitude to the river for saving him as an infant, and therefore he could not personally, nor would God allow him to, wreak the 2 plagues of blood and frogs on it. Besides the river, can we think of any other inanimate object that Moses might owe a debt of gratitude to, or anyone? I'm thinking we could expand it to the reeds where his sister hid to see that, you know?
Yeah, yes, definitely. I was thinking to his sister is definitely where he needs to extend gratitude. He would not have made it without his sister watching over him in the river.
Right.
And then speaking to Pharaoh's daughter about, hey, I know somebody who can help you with this.
Exactly. So it's really interesting. And I like to think about inanimate objects in my life, and you might think of them in your life, that you might feel Hakarat HaTov toward. And what the practice might be. For example, we do blessings for food. We have Berachot HaNehanin, which are blessings of appreciation for all kinds of things, like good smells and rainbows and intelligence. And you might have some fun with this idea. Think of things, inanimate things that you are grateful for, and you can do your own blessings of appreciation. I have a very close attachment to my drawing pen. I really do. And I know that sounds crazy, but I really feel like there's some kind of I can feel an energy in it. And I would definitely say a prayer of gratitude for my pen when it's working. So that's an interesting thing you might want to go over with your group.
Yes, that sounds like a great idea. I'm always especially grateful for trees. Whenever I stop and look at trees, it always makes me feel so peaceful. So I'm always very grateful for trees. I love them.
I do too. And I think that is something a lot of people share. I mean, we even have Tu B'Shvat to honor the trees.
Yes.
So, and that might even be taking this thought a little bit further. We certainly have to thank trees for so many things. Oxygen, fruit, wood, holding the soil together. There's so many things. So that's really good. And there's even Jewish laws against cutting down trees in times of war. You're not allowed to cut down fruit trees, even in a time of war. So that's kind of interesting. Another interesting thing, the opposite of gratitude, ingratitude, is called kafoi hatov, literally covering over the good. And even a kippah, the head covering, is from the same root, kafoi. Sometimes a sense of entitlement or sense of bitterness can lead to kafoi hatov. Even here, the tradition urges us to give thanks regardless of circumstances. One of the things we talked about yesterday for the standard topics was that being grateful doesn't mean pretending there's no bad in your life or in the world. It means that even during times that are trying, you still see the good that there is. I was saying yesterday, when I led a Chai Mitzvah group and we did the standard gratitude, we kept a gratitude journal. And one of the women in the group, her husband was undergoing chemo. I'm happy to say he's fine now. But one of the things she wrote in her journal, she was just grateful to be able to be out in the sun, because you spend so much time in an unnatural environment in the hospital, that she just really appreciated the fresh air and the sun when she was able to get there. So this is the same thing. We try to not grow our midot of bitterness, or we try to go the other way. We don't want to be entitled. We don't want to be embittered. We want to see the good in the world and focus on that, even without denying that there are always things that could be improved. And they even find, scientific studies have shown that if you have this attitude of gratitude, you actually tend to live longer, be healthier, accomplish what's on your to-do list more easily. All of these things are connected to this positive attitude. So it's sort of an interesting thing to do. And let's take this to the next one. We're talking about reasons to have trouble being grateful. And this text is from Bachya ibn Pakuda, who was a Jewish philosopher and a rabbi who lived in Zaragoza al-Andalus, which is now Spain, in the first half of the 11th century. He's often referred to as Rabbeinu Bachya. He said in the introduction to Duties of the Heart, which is where this text can be found, that he wished to fill a great need in Jewish literature. He felt that neither the rabbis of the Talmud nor subsequent rabbis adequately brought all the ethical teachings of Judaism into a coherent system. He felt that many Jews paid attention only to the outward observances of Jewish law. He called them the duties performed by the parts of the body, chovot ha'evarim, without regard to the inner ideas and sentiments, the duties of the heart, chovot halev. He also felt that many people disregarded all duties incumbent upon them, whether outward observances or inner moral obligations. So as we read, let's think about each of the three obstacles to gratitude that Ibn Pakuda cites. And I'm thanking you again in advance, Kristen. And I will also say that those three obstacles are going to be pretty easy to find.
All right. Even though God is good to all of creation without exception, as the verse Psalms 145:9 says, God is good to all. Nonetheless, most people are unable to recognize that or to understand how valuable that is. There are three reasons why. First, because they are too absorbed in worldly things and the enjoyment of them, and they are too involved in pursuing physical pleasures that can never be gratified. The second reason is that they grow up with a plethora of unending God-given favors which they grew used to, and they came to see them as typical, permanent features of their lives, and they overtook their obligation to be grateful. The third reason is based on the fact that people suffer all sorts of travails in this world and are afflicted either bodily or monetarily.
Yeah, that's good. So I think many people have experienced these three obstacles in their own experience. Which do you think is the hardest obstacle to overcome, if you think that one of them is harder than the others?
That's really hard. It's a combination of being too absorbed and suffering all sorts of travails. It's when you get too absorbed, our lives are so busy. It's not so much that we're pursuing physical pleasures. For me, when I think of too absorbed in worldly things, I think about more about how I am often so extremely busy that I don't take the time to slow down and think about what else is happening around me. Um, and then with the last one, well, yeah, there's all kinds of issues that people have to go through. Sometimes they're health issues, sometimes they're issues of uh, health related matters for other people related to you. Sometimes it is money issues. These things, um, we don't necessarily cause them. Nobody necessarily causes them at all, but we have to suffer through them and deal with them. And sometimes they can just get so overwhelming that you don't look around and see what else is going on.
It's true. And actually, if you can even step back a little and try to be grateful for some small thing, it actually, I think, breaks down the absorption in other things. It helps you to realize and get some perspective. The one we didn't talk about, the plethora of unending God-given favors, which they were used to. I think a lot of people talk about the millennials as people who have had it so easy that they are so entitled. They don't know how to work. They don't know how to deal with any little obstacles in their lives. And it's interesting, one of our supplemental materials for the standard topic, which I'm also going to put a link in my follow-up email, the happiness quotient that we have. My kids, I had to explain to them that you don't have to be happy all the time. You're not supposed to be happy all the time. But a lot of people feel they need to be always happy. And if they're not happy, there's a problem. And, our drug companies have started giving people drugs to make them feel not stressed or not anxious. Sometimes a little anxiety is necessary. I had a friend who, at the same time, her father passed away. Her boyfriend of 8 years broke up with her, and she moved to a new city. And she was really having trouble and anxiety. And the doctor gave her something. And she said one day she sat there and she said, wait a minute, I should be stressed. All these things happen to me at the same time. And she said, you know what, I'm not going to take this. I'm just going to deal with it. And, this is many years ago and she's fine. But, we need to not be so delicate. We need to have a good attitude and know that we don't have to be happy all the time. And in fact, overcoming difficulties and helping other people overcome them is sometimes much more gratifying than just leading an easy life.
Yeah. It reminds me of a story, a children's book that I used to read to my kids when they were real little. And this particular book, I cannot remember the title. It was so very long ago. But there was this character who had a kind of a fairy godmother, somebody who was going to grant them a wish. And they said, all my life I have never experienced happiness. I want to experience happiness. And so they said, okay, I'm going to send you on this little trip and you will experience happiness. So they sent this person, this character, because it being a children's book, it wasn't a person, it was a character or an animal of some sort, sent them off to this pond. And they looked into the pond and suddenly felt overwhelming sadness and started crying and crying. And the person, the character granting the wish shows up, and the first character, you tricked me. And he says, oh, no, I haven't. You have to suffer sadness, or you'll never be able to truly know when you're happy.
It's a nice story and very true. Absolutely. And that's why we need to be grateful for things that are there that we're grateful for. It's interesting because more about duties of the heart. It was written because the 613 mitzvot were mandated, but emotions are not mandated. So it's harder to explain them or to make sense out of them in certain ways. And as we're still looking on this text, it's interesting to think, do you think that duties of the heart, for example, the to be grateful, let's say, do you think it should be mandated the way we're commanded to do other things? Which also brings me to an interesting fact. It's not a mitzvah to love your parents. It's a mitzvah to respect them and to care for them. But our emotions are not mandated, interestingly enough. We can't regulate emotions. I think the idea behind the loving and respecting of the parents is that will lead to love. But I just thought it was an interesting thing to bring up, that this text is from a book that talks about how it's not a mitzvah to be grateful, but it's definitely a Jewish thing that is supported. So my question to you, to one more question about this text, is if you were going to mandate a midah, such as gratitude or generosity or any others, would you do that, and which one would it be?
Oh, that is hard. They're so interconnected.
That's very true. Good point.
It's like you mentioned generosity. That one can often lead to gratitude.
Interesting. Yes.
So I'm not sure that you could just single out one. Our emotions are all so very much interconnected and dependent on each other. And it's very complex. I'm not sure that I could.
I think that's a very good point. And, one of the things about Mussar is that every midah has a whole spectrum. You can be too generous or not generous enough. You're trying to get right to the middle. And and everything is connected with everything else. So you're completely right. And it's very interesting to think about what other midot are connected to generosity or to gratitude or to any of them, because they really do go together. Obviously, if someone is generous towards you, you'll feel gratitude towards them. So they're connected. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of different things that can go into it. So when you're leading a group, you might want to think about that as well. And that brings us very interestingly to the next text, which is one of the most often recited blessings, and it's interesting to analyze it through the lens of gratitude. So let's take a look. It's Hamotzi. Do you want to go ahead?
Sure.
Thanks.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed are you, eternal our God, ruler of the universe, who has brought forth bread from the earth.
Very, very nice. Thank you. So obviously, for what is the gratitude in this blessing expressed?
Well, it's not actually bread itself. It's the fact that we've got grain has come from the earth, and we know how to turn it into bread. And that is what we need to be very grateful for, not only for the things itself, for the grain, the water, all that goes into the bread, but also for the knowledge.
Very good point. And the act of blessing for the person who does it, it's, and I think this is true of most blessings, it makes us a part of it now. It makes us grateful, and it makes us realize where we fit in the greater continuum of the thing for which we're grateful. There's a saying that God owns the world, yet the world was made for men or for people. And the question is, how do these two statements not contradict each other? Well, it's because the first one, the world belongs to God, is without a blessing. But after you say a blessing, the world belongs to you as well. And that's how the rabbis have explained it. So I think that's how this blessing does something for the person who offers it. And we can think about our days. I don't know about you, whether you do, but you and the people in your group and myself, what blessings do we regularly recite? And how might you infuse them with a greater sense of gratitude? In my experience, blessings for really out of the way, amazing things, I've got a great sense of gratitude. There's a blessing you say, for example, when you're rescued from danger. And one day I was picking up one of my kids, and my other two kids were in the car, and the emergency brake suddenly didn't work, and a car started rolling down the driveway, and a school bus was coming, and I ran, and I'm yelling, pull the emergency brake, but my kids were like 4 and baby, and the other one was like 8, but nothing happened. We were okay. And when I went back, my daughter was playing with a rabbi's daughter. When I came back, the rebbitzin had a prayer, and I never forgot that there's a prayer you say when you're rescued from danger, and that I never felt so much gratitude.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So I think that goes to the fact that acts in our life, some acts just go unacknowledged. But if we consider writing our own blessings for otherwise unacknowledged things, or create our own rituals for certain things, exercise, taking a vitamin, speaking with a friend, whatever, we might imbue them also with a greater sense of holiness and gratitude.
Yeah. And there's always the fallback blessing, the Shehekianu.
That's right.
Like that. Okay, I don't know. I'm sure there is a blessing for this somewhere, but I'm not sure of the exact words. Let me do this one instead.
Right. And it still expresses the feeling. You're still making that connection. And God knows exactly what you're talking about. And so do you. Because, it's not necessarily that you pick the right words, it's that you pick the right feelings. So there's something called Brachot HaNehanin. They bless all kinds of things. And I'm going to send a link to that. There's one for good smells, and for intelligent people, and thunder and lightning and rainbows. And it would be interesting. So I'll definitely send that in the follow-up email.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have some interesting practices to help bring this midah to life. So I'm going to ask you to read the first part of it, and I'll read the second paragraph, so you're not only reading.
Okay.
Thanks.
A powerful way to grow your ability to feel grateful is to keep a journal. Before you go to sleep each night, think about the day that has passed and who or what enriched your day in some way. Jot down the things as well as the names of those people to whom you owe a debt of gratitude. Friends, teachers, family members, salespeople, custodians, and others. The next day, be sure to thank at least one of the people on your list. Try out various ways of expressing your gratitude. A verbal thank you, a handwritten note, email or Facebook post, a small gift, an offer to help them in some way, a donation in their honor, or anything else you can think of.
Another way to keep a gratitude journal is to take one photograph each day of something for which you are grateful, and then turn the photos into a collage or review them at the end of each week as you enter Shabbat. And I think all of these ways are great. It's also very interesting to me that in this day of social media, I find it so much easier. Like, we have group text. You go to dinner at someone's house, and you can just text them and say thank you, or send a photo of what happened that night. And I think it really builds good feelings. And of course, there's Instagram, where it's always nice to post things. And then you can spread that good feeling to other people. So that's a very nice way to practice gratitude. This one is interesting. It's wonderful to wake up one's body by chanting. Modeh ani lefanecha is a prayer said each morning when we first wake up, because our soul has been returned to us. We're grateful for this new day. So there are many different melodies for this prayer that you may wish to use in your practice. In fact, Rabbi Shefa Gold has composed 36 different melodies that you can access on an app called Flavors of Gratefulness. The app offers an opportunity for reflection and journaling about each melody. That's an interesting thing to add as well. Oh, this is funny. Read this one, it's good.
Complaint fast, not about speed, about not eating. Because gratitude is such a central principle in Judaism, the tradition deems those who complain incessantly to be sinners. Think about the Israelites when they left Egypt and complained for 40 years in the desert. What do you tend to complain about? What would it take to restrain from complaining and focus on the positive? A complaint fast, called Tanis Chachin in Yiddish, is an actual thing. Here's one way to practice it. Stop complaining for 24 hours or more. If you accidentally complain, you must donate money to tzedakah or balance out the complaint with a comment, call, or letter of praise about someone or something else.
This is really fun to try, especially if you have someone you know who tends to complain. I tried it not even for 24 hours. I said, let's just try this for an hour. And it was really interesting. And when you start to focus on being more positive, it's a great thing. It's really interesting. I highly recommend you try this.
Yeah, because when I think about it, I bet a lot of times we complain about something without even realizing we're doing that.
Mm-hmm. Especially in these days of political strife and everyone's arguing all the time about their views. It's just interesting to try to focus on the positive and the good things and see how different your day will feel. This is a nice one too. The Jewish tradition is rich in blessings that express gratitude. Place Thanksgiving or gratitude prayers in appropriate locations around your home. Morning blessings on the bedstand, food blessings in the kitchen or dining room, the Asher Yatzar prayer, which offers gratitude for the fact that our body and our organs function properly near the bathroom. The Israeli composer Uzi Hitman wrote a song Todah, which means thank you, that may inspire you to write your own thank you poem. You can hear it and see the words in Hebrew at this link. I will read the English words to you. The song itself is not really my taste in music. However, the words are beautiful. It's, thanks for all you made, thanks for all you gave me, insight and understanding, a friend or two. For all that I have in the world, a flowing song and a forgiving heart, because of all this, I go on. Thanks for all you made, thanks for all you gave me, a child's laughter, blue skies, a piece of land and a warm home, a place to sit, loving friends, because of all this, I go on. Thanks for all you made, thanks for all you gave me, a day of happiness, honesty, and integrity, a sad day that is gone, the victory of 2,000 years, the white wings of peace, because of all this, I go on. This song is also popular in Greek and Polish versions, which shows that this sentiment is universal. The idea that gratitude makes us able to keep going is very important to our practice. So I suggest you click on that link when I send the follow-up email. And then we have some very nice additional information. Here's a fun fact. The word Yehudim, Jews in Hebrew, is derived from that other word for gratitude, hoda'ah. In Genesis 29:35, we read that Leah conceived again and bore a son and declared, this time I will thank, or odeh, the eternal, and therefore she named him Yehuda, Judah. Leah becomes a model of gratitude for us because she went on to name her other sons with words showing her gratitude. For instance, Gad was named for what luck. I have a friend named Gadi. Asher for what fortune, and Zebulun for choice gift. Then gratitude is a major theme in the following films, and you might want to watch some of them with your group, or before or after. Pay It Forward. Did you see that movie?
No, I didn't. I wanted to, and I never got the opportunity. I'm going to have to add that to my next Netflix list.
For sure. It's interesting. I would love to talk about it with you afterward and see. I did not feel uplifted at the end of it. It was a beautiful film, and Pay It Forward certainly is about gratitude, but you'll see. It's an interesting, very, very good film. Some others, It Could Happen to You or Forrest Gump, all good movies. And very interesting to think about in terms of gratitude. We have some good supplemental materials. The Power of Casual Gratitude by Julie Beck. She develops a theory of power of weaving gratitude talk into your speech, not taking simple kindness for granted, and replacing thank you with I'm sorry. I'm not sure I think we should replace thank you with I'm sorry, but I think if you do, make sure you are grateful and thank people, that you will feel much more positive and uplifted, and your relationships will be more respectful of each other. This Eli talk, Rabbi Abby Soslin speaks about shameless Judaism as a path to happiness. This is a really good one. Shame plays such a defining role in a human experience that its absence is one of the first things mentioned about Adam and Eve in Gan Eden. Rabbi Abby Soslin walks us through her own personal journey with shame and the powerful instances when this emotion appears in our tradition in Torah and liturgy. Rabbi Soslin makes a case for dropping the feelings of shame in the situations where it doesn't serve us, opening up a space for gratitude, action, and being there for other people. Shame, I think, can be paralyzing. And in this talk, she's talking about, she was older, maybe late 30s, I don't know, and she wasn't married yet. And this was like a terrible thing. Her family was so ashamed of her. And it's just very interesting that when she let this go, she was able to feel better about herself, and her life went on, and she eventually did marry someone. But the thing is that shame can hold you back. So it's an interesting thing. And then the third one is a TED Talk. Professor Sean Akor explains how the lens through which we see the world shapes our reality. 90% of our happiness is not grounded in hard facts, but in how we perceive our lives. And this is a really good one. He's got a good sense of humor. I would very highly recommend watching that TED Talk. And then the very ending, I want to talk about, each source book includes questions on the back cover to help focus participants on their independent projects. At the end of this session, take a couple of minutes to look at the questions, either have them write their answers or talk about it, whichever works better for your group. And the questions that go with our gratitude topic are, for which of your independent projects do you feel most grateful and why? And can you express gratitude through any of your independent projects and explain? So I don't know if you are doing any projects, but it's an interesting lens to look at them through, because sometimes when you do for others, you feel grateful as well. So that brings us to our ends of our discussion. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up or talk about?
No, but I want to thank you for leading this. It's definitely a really good session. Thank you.
So good. Thank you so much. And thank you for reading. You saved my voice. I can still breathe, and that's a great thing. And thank you again. I hope to see you again next time.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye.